Suddenly, everything around us explodes and the world comes to an end. The army can't hold on anymore, and the streets are ruled by force. The president declares that we're all done for, but our last chance lies with veterans who've played more hours on Game Dead than on Among Us, which means we're in great hands. Meet Kong Song-ho, a once famous streamer who burned out and now hides away from the world. But he's hiding a secret. The Dead VR game he spent so much time on is happening in real life. Suddenly, a dimensional gate bursts open in his living room, and as he steps into the spotlight to become the newest national leader, we see President Jang Won-taek strike a serious pose, clear his throat for a moment of silence, and perhaps quietly hope the crowd is still rooting for him. And we dive straight into the deep end as he declares martial law, sends the army to take over, and shuts down the roads for all that happens when the government overreacts, or maybe not. He's lighting a cigarette while shaking slightly, looking like his secrets just got exposed. He wanted us to meet our end with dignity, though I fear my last words might have sounded a bit old-fashioned. And there it is, the asteroid from the game Survival Life has actually hit us, and someone is getting fired for letting that secret slip. He even gave the rock that's about to end humanity a silly name, Yoonjam-B. Suddenly we're in the control room where things have gone wild because the US military couldn't stop the giant space rock. And so, the asteroid crashes near Okinawa, and you can feel home values dropping like a stone. And by crashes, I mean it blows up like a giant bomb, causing damage so huge you'd call it a miracle just to survive it. You're right, folks, because the people of Japan are turning into zombies, and those zombie spores from Yoonjam-B are landing in our country today at 10 p.m., so my afternoon plans are ruined because we can't stop this zombie apocalypse, but at least we're being honest about it without any sugarcoating. But just as it seemed hopeless, a twist emerged. A tiny group of awakened folks might be immune, turning this zombie apocalypse into a game with a sneaky advantage. They've set up safe waiting spots at marked places, but you'll have to survive a whole year before they open, and that's the prize. Just as we're ready to drop little how-to guides for early monsters by airplane, nothing says we're prepared like delivering IKEA-style monster-slaying instructions from the sky. All the thermal power plants will shut down, leaving everyone without electricity, and he admits he is a man with many faults which you can hardly believe. With one last bow to the television, he says it was an honor and hopes we all meet again, alive and well, though he wonders if that promise will hold true for everyone. The TV clicks off, someone sighs, and I truly hope the end won't come, even though you're right to say I'm just part of the problem. But here we meet our hero Kong Seong-ho, who's all geared up and ready to survive the chaos while everyone else panics, treats this apocalypse like another Tuesday with a psycho grin and his cute dog, calls himself a veteran of the end times even though it's the world's first rodeo, and brings his battle-ready best friend along as we flash back to a ruined city street swarming with zombies that must be the game the president was talking about, with a couple of bored guys standing over the horde. Who are our players, starting with Duckbutt Peak Peck, a guy whose ridiculous hair matches his name and who's worried about losing a bet, and Rabbit Gongju, a tank-like dude wearing bunny ears, making us feel like we're completely screwed. While the peanut gallery chimes in, a fan in a strawberry apron and cat ears steps up to call out the heroes for letting their kills get stolen, proving that fashion in this apocalypse is truly inspired. Not wanting to be left out, flashy blonde archer Kim Op-joa chimes in with a smug, "Am I wrong?" while striking a pose that makes him look like he's in one direction, claiming the other two are nothing without their flashy moves, which comes from him as the pot calling the kettle fabulous. This whole circus is just survival life, and our boy Peek Peek is done with the insults, so he dives straight into the horde screaming, "You'll regret this," which is his famous last words because this game is anything but a normal zombie slayer. This game was a wild mix of zombies and fantasy monsters, proving that sometimes you just throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. It was so hard that even tough Korean gamers shied away, and when the best players quit in anger while PCP flies apart in midair, you know things are truly out of control. The game hit the top of the charts the moment it was released, likely because every player is a masochist light, but just his luck, Peek Peek is about to get taken down by a giant meat shield. When you're the first one to rush in, the meat shield gets blown to bits, teaching you a valuable lesson. Don't be the main character. After a whole year, the game was so empty it only had 4 players left, and they're telling our friend Kim Op-joa to take the final hit just to feel like heroes. Kim Op-nim, the ultimate showman, unleashes a huge laser arrow at just one zombie, which is pure overkill and beautiful, but Kim Bob calls it a piece of trash because all that effort for one kill shows just how burned out the game has become. After the fighting stops, the crew is completely exhausted and sprawled on a rooftop surrounded by the spoils of their hard work, trapped in a boring endgame where there is nothing left to do and only existential dread remains. But wait, Kim Op-joa sees a new message pop up in the quiet chat, a spark of life that makes Rabbit Gongju smell fresh meat and realize the board players are ready to adopt their first friend in months, bringing the game count to 5 and finally making it boom again. The guide beamed with pride like a parent watching their child off to school, only to have their excitement turn to shock when the new player immediately quit the tutorial, and their only hope for fresh content vanished in a heartbeat. The gang just keeps complaining about how hard the game is, wondering what's really going on in the developers' minds just like everyone else does. And with that, the bunny-eared guy and Survivor 1 both click off, ready to call it a day. Survivor 1 waves a final goodbye, proving they're a true team even in their weird outfits, the kind of chaotic family you only see in a dying MMO. As each veteran logged off, he felt the journey ending and the sadness hitting hard. So even as their numbers dwindled, he stayed on, streaming day and night and recording videos just to find a reason to keep playing. After a few months, the tutorial got much easier and the start of the game improved, but as Debs muttered, it was still a bit too little and too late. He cheered for the huge new update and all the fresh stories to find. But his friends never returned, leaving him alone in the bright light, waiting for a party that had already ended. Then came the final blow. Their survival service is ending in 1 week, so they were just waiting for him to quit. He hoped to slay one final monster with his buddies before hanging up, but the game crashed on him instead. Seems like fate was already setting the stage. He hits the stop button and takes off the gear as a wave of despair washes over him, ending the dream. Then he wipes the streaming account where he spent 5,500 hours broadcasting, a number that dwarfs my own subscriber count. Yet he can't throw away the hard drive because some memories are too heavy to delete. Now back in reality, we meet Kong Songo, the burnout bro, who's been running a tteokbokki stand for 3 months because he can't stop loving kimbap joa. So he turned his favorite food into his job. He spent the last 3 years turning his career from a top-tier gamer to a top-tier kimbap roller, proving that even a snack shop can be the ultimate destination. You can see business is booming, with the place packed with students and him ruling the after-school rush from the first floor of the house he inherited after losing his parents in high school, while the second floor serves as his home, making for a classic tragic backstory that we definitely got. Just as he's about to serve the food, a regular named Mikyong calls out to him, and suddenly the whole shop is busy because everyone loves her pretty face. She leans in to ask if he's noticed something, and while he has no clue what she means, he certainly isn't complaining about how close she is. She shows him a viral post where a guy claims shouting his name makes a status window appear, sparking a furious debate in the comments between those calling it a hoax and others vowing it works, while she pouts with genuine disappointment after trying it herself and failing to unlock her secret anime powers, making the whole scene feel both adorable and a little sad. He just laughed it off, teasing Mikyong that it would never really happen and calling her gullible, all while rolling his eyes at the thick irony of the situation. But later, when he's all alone, he has to try it for science, and he whispers it just in case for the meme, leaving his status window open. Suddenly, he jumps at the noise, frozen in surprise as he waits to see what comes next. Wow! A giant blue window pops into view with a crackle of energy, proving it's real, but Q asks if we can go even higher. He's sweating and frozen in shock because it actually showed up, and now you're officially stuck with the rest of your life. He checks the stats. Health 11, Strength 12, just like a regular NPC, until he spots a special trait that looks familiar, making him realize his painful past is finally paying off. But wait, he realizes Sura never had a trait system like this new one, with her unique skill opening a private portal. Only the trait holder can use this power with the command open portal. And as he pauses to think, he chuckles that getting godlike powers and his first thought is to critique the interface makes him sound like a true gamer. He decides to use it anyway, shouts open portal, and a glowing blue gate tears through his apartment, bringing the game's labyrinth right into reality. He clutches his head in pure panic, wondering if this is truly his new reality. Realizing that with the 5 stages of grief starting, he's stuck in denial and frantically uses his phone to Google for proof that this apocalypse is fake. He searched until his heart sank, then found the news report about NASA watching over asteroid on Jambi, which, even though they say the chance of it hitting Earth is almost 0, is very real and actually out there. He begins to spiral, but he yells no over and over, reminding himself that maybe it's just a random coincidence and that it's far too soon to jump to conclusions, all while fighting desperately to keep his head above water. He turns back to the glowing, reality-defying portal in his room, staring into the dark abyss as he wonders if he should finally take that first step to accept the ultimate quest. With just 32 days left before the world ends, our hero has one final month to turn from a burnt-out schlub into the last hope for humanity, and the clock is ticking with 0 time to waste. Now he stares deep into the dark hole of his portal, hoping to find proof of the world's end, which isn't really a big deal. Kong Samho's survival instincts finally kick in, and he asks the million-dollar question, isn't it too dangerous to go in without a plan? Which is a great question to ask after you've already decided to go in. So, what is this master planner's brilliant strategy, this pinnacle of tactical thinking? He grabs a soup ladle and simply sticks it in there to feel the ground, which is the very definition of peak survival strategy. He scoops up a handful of dirt, realizes it's not a magic maze, and breathes a sigh of relief that this is just a secret door to somewhere else on Earth before grabbing his bag and charging in, knowing his moment of doubt is over but his next few minutes of crazy decisions are just starting. He stands in front of the glowing gate, ready to jump into the unknown after one last second of thinking. And let's see where this crazy adventure takes us. And this isn't his grimy apartment anymore. The air feels fresh, the light is bright, and our boy looks like he's just discovered color for the first time as he tumbles out of a portal that hangs in midair before vanishing, dropping him unceremoniously into a lush, vibrant forest where he wonders if this is for real, only to hear someone whisper, "Yeah, buddy, it's real." His first sharp observation in this strange new world is to ask a random bird about the cold weather, only for his friend to point out that talking about the weather is the last thing you should do when you've been teleported to another dimension with no phone signal in this remote place. Since he can't tell where he is, he grabs a marker and draws a neat square on a tree, marking his path just like Hansel and Gretel in the woods. So our hero starts his long walk alone across a vast green sea, and the huge size of this place finally hits him. On nose, the fresh feeling has finally faded. So he screams up at the sky, begs for it to stop, and wonders how a forest could possibly be this huge as he realizes he's been thrown into the wild. A city boy trapped in a forest much bigger than his apartment. Exhausted and desperate, he begs for a sign. And the universe answers with a terrible sense of humor by making two glowing red eyes appear in the bushes behind him. Before he can react, a flash of red light blasts him sideways like a bowling pin, revealing a majestic white deer with glowing antlers and a system window that declares him in a new world, not Earth, confirming he has been ice-skied to this strange place. After all the chaos, the laser beam deer just casually walked right past him without even looking back, zapped him with a single beam, and kept on walking as if nothing happened, leaving him wondering just what kind of weird place this is. Kong Ho finally sighs in relief, reasoning that even though that monster stared at him with deadly eyes and fired a laser from its face, it wasn't being aggressive, which made perfect sense. He began to think, realizing he still had no proof of the apocalypse, and while creatures like the stone monkeys or humped boars from the game Sura would have been expected, a valley deer was a terrifying unknown that made him doubt his gamer knowledge was actually a cheat code. But just as he grips his knife, a chill truth hits him. This place is all about survival, and his instincts, sharpened by years of deadly games, are screaming at him to act. He stood there with his knife ready, finally facing the truth he had spent so long trying to ignore. The doom he feared was real, and humanity was truly gone. But that hope didn't last long because he found the proof. A glowing tree with a single shining fruit called a sun apple, and that changes everything. He grabs the glowing apple from the tree, wondering if it's safe to eat since it's usually a good idea in stories. But he quickly realizes this isn't just any fruit and is about to test his gaming skills. Without a second's doubt, he takes a big bite, and a system message instantly flashes. Your stamina has been slightly restored. A feeling that is immediate, unmistakable, and strangely known, proving the game's rules are real here while the apple's real power is about to strike him. The apple works just like the sun apple juice you can buy, but this isn't just a similar world. It's a whole new world running on PTO win mechanics. He lets out a deep, hollow laugh that leaves no room for doubt, proving this isn't a dream or a coincidence but a real moment he is standing right in the middle of. If the magic apple wasn't enough to convince him, there was one other little detail he'd noticed earlier: goblin droppings, which served as undeniable, stinky proof that this was truly the end. He clutches his head as despair and a terrible certainty flood him, mutters his own name, Kong Samho, as if waking up to a nightmare, and finally decides to stop running and face the truth. His eyes tighten as doubt vanishes, leaving only a chilling certainty that the end is finally here. With his terrifying realization done, Kong Sunho doesn't hesitate, blasts back through his portal, and gets straight to work, skipping any sadness to immediately dig up an old hard drive to study his early game footage of Sura. He pulls up the data, revealing that an alien asteroid named Unjamai will crash near Okinawa on July 20th, triggering a zombie outbreak followed by a deadly plague 5 hours later, leaving just 32 days before the world falls into chaos. As he flips through his old files, he remembers that the game he now lives in was never meant for fun, but was instead a cruel nightmare full of terrible rules, especially the iron death disease that could turn your car, your weapons, and your whole world into rust and dust in a split second. It wasn't a plague that hurt the people, but a deadly wave that hit civilization 5 hours after the zombie spores arrived, sweeping through and crumbling every piece of metal it touched to turn the world into a stone age of sticks and stones against monsters, with no guns or cars left. Sure, the iron death disease will eventually fade, but that is just when the real trouble begins. The trouble is that this nightmare lasts 6 months to a year, forcing us to survive zombies and monsters with nothing but our bare hands and hope, which is basically a death sentence. But the biggest twist of all is that this civilization-ending plague meant nothing to him, because the secret power he found was a private pocket dimension that the disease couldn't touch, giving him the ultimate cheat code. With his plan finally set, Kong Samho dives into the shopping trip of a lifetime, spending every last penny to stock up on body armor, knives, food, tools, medicine, and even solar panels to power his survival dreams. When the sun rises, he rushes to the store to grab supplies. Because every canned good and every tool he finds is another day he gets to survive. On the walk home, he stops to buy a heavy-duty 60 pounds hunting bow from a private seller, knowing his guns will soon be useless and already planning 3 steps ahead. A flash of doubt makes him question if he's the only one who cares and if he's overreacting, but he looks up at the sky, laughs at that idea, and decides that even if the world ends or he dies, he'd much rather be the crazy guy who lived on than the one who played it safe. Back at his small shop, he immediately slams a closed for remodeling sign on the door, refusing to waste a single second on his old life now that a new one is about to be forced upon him. Right when he was about to head back, a voice cut through the air from Hook Ajiasi, a young neighbor who had spotted him. The cheerful young woman, Mikong SSI, asks if he's closing the shop, so he quickly makes up a story about the place being old and needing repairs because you can't tell your neighbor you're getting ready for a zombie apocalypse. She jokes that he must be rich and sweats while trying to act cool, but he's really just being smooth. He tries to brush her off by saying he has things to do, but when she asks if it's Ajiasi and then decides to just say goodbye, it feels like she had something more on her mind. As Mikyong SSI walked away, he couldn't stop wondering what she really meant to say, feeling like there was a small, everyday problem hiding in her words. In any other case, he'd have just asked, but he stays quiet, and I can smell the trouble coming from a mile away. With his new bow and a heavy heart for the serious matters he must attend to, he whispers the lifeline that opens the portal. Kong Song-ho wasn't a brawler. He was a planner who spent weeks studying a boss's moves to craft a perfect strategy he could then execute without a single mistake. He draws his heavy new bow with surprising ease, laughs with every shot, and realizes that if he can just aim right, this might actually work. His eyes lock on the target, his gamer instincts taking over as he readies to release the arrow. He releases the arrow, watching it soar in a perfect curve before slamming right into the center of the target. He can only tie the string properly about 5 times before his arms feel like jelly, but seeing those scraped fingers tells him that today is the day to start building serious strength. With his simple preparations done, he steps up with a serious look to reveal his big plan. First, he has to decide if he truly has what it takes to hunt monsters in his current form, because owning the right gear is easy, but having the courage to use it is a whole different story. Next, he must build a secret hideout in this portal world forest to stash all his supplies and call it his new home. Of course, he isn't an idiot, so he won't do anything foolish like charging into a monster nest alone until his extra weapons and supplies arrive. Just as he thinks that, he spots more glowing sun apples hanging there for the taking. So he climbs the tree with a huge grin, muttering that his luck is insane because this guy is basically tripping over power-ups. His philosophy is all about getting ready for anything and looking ahead, which is how he stayed alive in a game meant to kill you. His eyes sweep across the forest floor until they land on a tiny pile of trash that looks like waste to everyone else but is actually a treasure trove of goblin droppings for him. Now, why was he hunting for goblin poop? Because in Sura, goblins are pack animals that always hang out in groups, so finding a single pile out there means a lone goblin is nearby. He leans in to inspect it, noticing the undigested seed inside, which tells him the goblin hasn't been eating right, confirming his guess that this lonely, starving outcast is the perfect test subject. A cold resolve takes hold as he knows he must track down that man, no matter the cost, and finally get a real chance to test himself in a fight with a live target, even if it's just a pathetic one. As he follows his target, the sky grows dark, time runs out, and the chase begins with seconds counting down. As night deepens, the forest grows louder with the howling of wolves, signaling he is nearing a valley choke point where water flows, and there, hidden by the stream just as he guessed, stands a real goblin that looks creepingly identical to the ones in the game, with every nasty detail from its pointed ears to its gnarled skin perfectly brought to life. For reference, the game considers goblins to be low on the food chain, armed only with spears and poison darts, which isn't exactly what you'd expect from top predators. Their cruel hobby of poisoning and mocking their victims makes them sadists, which is why he picked a bow. He knocks an arrow, his whole world shrinking to the target, ready for the first test where he tells himself to stay calm despite racing adrenaline, spots a weak, spearless goblin exiled from its group, and knows he has the perfect chance. He takes a deep breath, pulls the string back, and whispers to himself not to get nervous because he knows he can hunt it, then releases the arrow with a sharp twang. The arrow hits the bullseye deep in the goblin's arm, making it scream in pain, but since it's not a killing blow, the fight isn't over yet. Even with an arrow sticking out of its shoulder, the goblin is still tough and turns to face you, its eyes daring you to try since this fight isn't going to be easy. As the goblin lunges, Kong Song-ho knows the fight is done, so he tosses the bow, grabs his knife, and goes wild with stabbing to make Plan B work. He steps right into the goblin's attack, and in a dizzying flash of movement, the man and the monster crash together in the dim light. The goblin moved faster than he thought, lunging forward with its dagger and sinking it straight into his leg. This bastard. The pain burns, but the shock is worse. And this isn't a game anymore. It's real blood and real suffering. Kong Samho, a true veteran, charges at the goblin and brings them both crashing to the ground. He pins the creature down, raises his knife as the goblin shrieks beneath him, and seizes his chance. With a low, guttural roar, he drives his blade deep into the goblin's chest, and a sickening crunch rings out through the forest. The goblin lets out one final, bubbling sound before going quiet, its red eyes turning black as it passes. He falls onto the body, breathless and bleeding, but he has won, and as the system chimes to give him 2 points, he lets out a raw, laughing roar of pure triumph because he has finally done it. As the goblin melts into tiny sparks of light, a glowing pouch falls to the ground, just like a treasure drop in a game. He opens the package, sees the guaca powder and vegetable oil, and his gamer mind instantly realizes that mixing them in sura creates a healing salve for his injured leg. With no time to rest and fear that the goblins will find the body and cause him real trouble, he begins digging furiously with his bare hands. There's another reason he's in such a hurry. He remembers a scary story about how leaving a dead body out in the open lets it turn into a bone creeper, a much worse kind of ghost, and he definitely isn't dealing with that kind of trouble tonight. While digging, he pauses to look at the stream and sees a flash of red in the water, which turns out to be a trout. His blood turns to ice as a silly thought about fish suddenly connects with a scary fact, and he stares back at the water with wide eyes, realizing with horror that this red trout valley might be full of them. A huge, unnatural shadow drops over him, and as he slowly turns with his heart pounding, he prays it's just a trick of the light, but he can't help but whisper, "Don't tell me." And there it stands, a towering furry beast of death that belongs only in nightmares. And as a system window confirms his worst fear, he stares up at this apex predator and realizes he is completely done for. In a crowded lecture hall, a cheerful blonde man gives an energetic talk on monsters, while his bored classmates, one barking woof woof, and another complaining that no one ever shows up, fail to match his passion. And what's this? A donation. See, that's all it takes to get this guy's attention. He completely ignores the haters and gives a big old thank you to Bulsangman Nim, while the person in the foreground wearing a VR headset gets a front row seat to this riveting lecture. He returns to his presentation to warn his huge crowd about the forest's real dangers, like werewolves and all those usual campfire tales, assuring them there's nothing to worry about. He talks in detail about owlbears, showing off his strange facts, then flexes his abs and explains that a bear marking its land is actually a good thing. Why? Because it proves the monster world is balanced. He says it with the confidence of a guy who has spent way too much time in a virtual world, so remember this tidbit, folks, because it might be on the test later. Suddenly, we snap back to reality, or whatever this weird place is, and the guy who was just wearing a VR headset, Kong Song-ho, finds himself standing in a dark forest staring death in the face as a massive owlbear that looks 10 times scarier than any cartoon version looms over him, only for him to shake it off and laugh because he knows from his past friends and gaming experience that this isn't some dramatic anime ending, but just another challenge for someone built different. He analyzes the situation like he's still playing the game, remembering how his streamer self taught him that hungry owlbears tear everything apart. But this one is just standing there, meaning it isn't hungry and is only annoyed. He looks down at the water and the fish, and suddenly it all makes sense. The owlbear isn't angry at him, it's furious that he's standing in its favorite fishing spot, and nobody messes with a man's fishing spot. So, if that's the case, he's got to find a way out, and with narrowed eyes, he knows there's only one path left. The classic hero's move, always the same trick, isn't it? There lies his inner battle. His mind is the brilliant gamer Kimbapsha, yet his body is just a normal guy named Kong Samho, ready to get torn apart even though he wants to fight. Still, he clenches his teeth as sweat streams down his face, forcing himself to move because he must survive. So he yells, "Come on!" And the owlbear, bored with his own thoughts, lunges right back at him. Our boy has a plan. He remembers that the owlbear can see in the dark but melts in the sun, so all he needs to do is follow the pattern he studied and strike, which sounds pretty easy. He slips out of the beast's wild swing with surprising speed, knowing he has only one perfect moment to make this work. A flash of red light streaks across his face right as he gets ready to move, marking the exact moment there's no turning back. To make the dark forest bright again, he runs up the owlbear's arm, flashes his knife at its eyes, and pulls off a perfect plan like a true veteran gamer. The owlbear screams in pain as the bright light blinds it, but Kong Ho stands firm, thinking he just won the big game, only to realize the forest vanished, and he's suddenly waking up in a bedroom with an alarm clock ringing. Kong Ho sat up in bed, his entire body screaming in pain, wondering if he just survived a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight. He smashes the alarm clock because it's already 8 in the morning, wondering if he actually passed out from exhaustion after barely surviving the night. Then the memory strikes him not as a thought but as a physical shock of terror, the frantic chase and snapping beak proving it was real, leaving him a disheveled mess who mutters, I really don't ever want to see one again. While his body runs on fumes until a sharp side cramp and the thought that he hasn't eaten since yesterday afternoon mark the final warning before he completely gives out. The crash of his little adventure hit Kong Sun Ho like a truck, slamming him face first onto the floor and draining him completely, proving that when your body and mind aren't on the same level, it's a real trouble. He gripes that his legs feel weak, but then his eyes catch his glowing backpack filled with apples, proving he can pull things from the game world and totally changing everything. He crawls over, bites into a glowing apple, and a system window pops up to tell him his stamina is back, filling him with a golden glow that makes him feel alive again, proving that video game logic works for recovery too, so he decides to ditch Gatorade and get some of that magic. And just like that, he's back to 100%, shining with a fresh, almost holy light, and the very first thing on his mind isn't the coming end or the monsters, but food. So he asks, "Shall we go fill my stomach?" Which makes him think, that's a man after my own heart. He walked into the local restaurant looking great, as if he had just survived a battle with a monster and come back from the dead, which made him look very strange there. Just as he finally thinks he can enjoy a quiet meal, Mikyong SSI suddenly pops up, flashes a peace sign, and claims it's her second favorite spot, even though her timing is suspiciously perfect. He stammers, trying to ask why she's sitting there, but she's already settled in with a grin, saying it's great to have a meal buddy, and our boy looks absolutely panicked as he realizes he's never dealt with this much social stuff before. She skips the small talk and asks if he tried that thing she mentioned, while Michu checks the status window, realizing this isn't the dinner chat he was hoping for. Her eyes suddenly sparkle as she points to the status window, her excitement so bright that Se-ho finally understands why she'd been acting strange. She already knows the secret. She pushes her phone into his face to show a news story about cash vanishing from a convenience store, leaving Samho just sitting there wondering if this person is either too naive or completely clueless, because the line between the two is razor thin right now. He sees right through her obvious question. So in a world where truth is power, he chooses to lie right to her face, though his attempt to stay smooth falls flat. And his lie is totally fair because he knows his special power isn't a flashy fighting trick, but something deeply personal that lets him open a private portal. This skill is built for a lone wolf who stands alone, not for someone running around in a group. Plus, in a world where he can't even keep himself safe, why would he ever show his true colors? Showing off a special non-fighting talent, right in the middle of a world-ending disaster is just like hanging a giant neon sign that screams, "Come eat me." It's just smart play. But since Mikyong is still asking about awakening, she must have awakened herself, and right as he realizes this, she suddenly apologizes to him. He asks her what she's sorry for, she gets shy and admits it, and then she reveals a secret lie of her own, turning this quiet diner into the set of a real spy thriller. He pauses to study her and decides she seems honest enough, so he acts cool and tells her she doesn't have to speak up right now. Then he drops a brilliant line on her, reminding her they still have time and asking her to wait until she feels brave enough, showing off his cool, calculated style as he doesn't just play the game but the people in it too. He left the diner and its drama behind, only to rush home just in time to see a huge delivery truck pulling up, and not just any truck. It's packed with enough boxes to fill the whole place. He calls the drivers the goats. And in this world of the apocalypse, they really are the true heroes. He thanks the driver, who is just glad to do his job, because all the things he ordered online are finally arriving, and we all love a man who respects service workers. Here it is, the Apocalypse Prayer Dream Hall, where a gas mask, fireproof suit, pepper spray, fire axe, gasoline can, plumbing pipe, fire extinguisher, and portable telescope form a carefully chosen kit with a clear purpose for a very specific mission. With his new axe gripped tight, Kong Ho steps through his portal to find a permanent hideout in the world of Sura, driven by the urgent need to survive. We're back in Sura's lush green world, where our boy pops out of a bush like a tiny cat, scanning the area while staying perfectly hidden. He spots a tiny cave tucked safely between the rocks, and his years of hard practice whisper that it's the perfect spot to hide out. But first, he pulls out his brand new portable telescope, because a perfect hideout is useless if a dragon lives there, and the key is finding out what kind of monster he's about to evict. He scans the ground near the entrance and shouts with joy as he spots tiny three-toed footprints, instantly recognizing them as belonging to the low-tier cobalt mobs, which makes him smile broadly knowing this is huge luck for a veteran player who now carefully checks the wind direction with a simple leaf to start his foolproof strategy. He knows his plan is deadly poison for the night-blooming kobolds sleeping deep in the cave, and while it is cruel, it is also efficient and pure genius. He starts collecting firewood, only to find that snapping branches with a fancy knife is much harder than expected, proving that even pro gamers must deal with real-world physics. After a bit of a struggle, he stacks the firewood neatly right at the cave entrance, thinking, "Yep, that should do it. The first part of the plan is done." Next, he grabs a gasoline can and pours it generously over the wood, knowing this will leave no survivors in the cave. But just as he's about to set the fire, a sleepy groan cuts him off, revealing a speech bubble that says cobalt, and showing his plan has hit a tiny snag. Right on cue, two green, scaly kobolds shuffle out of the dark, yawning and stretching like sleepy puppies who haven't noticed him at all. We zoom in on our new friends, who are all teeth and sleepy lizard dog energy, making them kind of cute in a monstrous way. Sango, who is usually so smooth, just waves a little while trying not to laugh at how awkward this moment feels. The friendly words are gone, and he instantly lunges forward with his fire axe high in the air, shouting, "It's time to kick them out, boys!" With one quick, clean swing, he drives the axe deep into the first kobold's head for a brutal, efficient kill, because he's not here to play games. The kobold drops without a fight, leaving him to wonder if that sleepy feeling was real, while the shocking truth hits him. He was strong enough to kill in one turn. And then, with a cheerful ding, the pop-up announces you've leveled up to 1 and earned 4 points, making you feel like a total winner. He saves his new stat points for later and focuses on business first, flicking his lighter and dropping it onto the gasoline-soaked wood before anyone else wakes up. The pile suddenly bursts into a roaring fire, and Professor Kimbapsha in the game of Sura shares a quick lesson. Every low-level monster shares one thing in common. As the smoke fills the cave, he points out their fatal flaw. Since they feared sudden disasters, this cloud of choking smoke was exactly the kind of surprise they couldn't handle. We watch a cobalt man choke on fumes, and Sango takes advantage of it, knowing that while burning them up would be faster, he's the new tenant and can't afford the mess, so he's calmly worrying about property cleanup during a monster purge, a level of practicality you have to respect. So he decided to smoke them out and handle them one by one, ending with an angry cobalt bursting from the haze and ready to face whatever lies outside, promising plenty of fun. Then, to finish them off while they're dizzy and can't tell which way is up, a whole pack of kobolds spills out of the cave, choking and screaming as they stumble blindly through the thick smoke. As they stumble out into the blinding light, disoriented and defenseless, our boy is already ready to pounce on them. He slips on his gas mask and fireproof suit, grabs his trusty fire axe, and looks like a fierce firefighter ready to charge into the flames. And he wades right into the chaos, swinging his axe in a beautiful deadly arc, clearing out the trash mobs like a whirlwind of destruction, only to be charged by a huge cobalt monster roaring something suspiciously like, "Job yell, bro, wrong monster. Get your lines right," until Sun Ho pulls out his pepper spray and blasts the beast right in the face with a sharp quack, proving that modern warfare can meet fantasy. The cobalt is completely shut down, screaming and clawing at its own face, proving that whatever hit it was no joke, just like when someone gets completely wrecked. As the beast goes mad from the rage of its many children, Sanho steps forward to end its suffering with a swift axe strike, bringing yet another fallen giant to its knees. He glances at the bodies while clutching his pipe, spots the final survivor hiding in the back, and speaks in a cold whisper. "Now it's just you left, huh? It's the leader," he said, watching the boss cower in fear, only to look down on the pathetic creature and whisper a final goodbye. With one final, brutal slam, he ends it, standing over the fallen leader in the dark cave before claiming your hideout as his new home, proving the eviction is truly complete. After the fight, he finally removes his mask to catch his breath, admitting that despite taking them down easily, his lack of natural endurance made it brutal and left him completely drained. He checks his stats and finds it's just like the game, down to the exhaustion and the classic gamer complaint about not getting points when leveling up, but he knows that getting stronger also unlocks useful things like shops. He walks into his new home and feels proud, knowing that this safe space is far more important than leveling up or buying things. With a massive, triumphant grin, he steps into his own secure space, declaring victory and safety as he surveys his messy new home base and size, realizing that even in the apocalypse, he still has to clean his nest before he can settle in. Now that the end of the world is coming in just 30 days, our hero Kong Sunho has finally found his own home after all that fighting. A real fixer-upper that happens to be nothing but a cave, which at least means no annoying neighborhood fees, so he starts his first job by giving the place a thorough spring clean. The hideout is about 15 meters deep and cozy, but while exploring his new bachelor pad, he finds a nasty welcome gift left by the previous tenants. After the battle, the last thing you want is to scrub monster filth off the floor, so Samho angrily shouts at the former occupants, calling them cobalt bastards and demanding they clean up after themselves. Even though living in this wild new world is tough, finding a safe spot is a huge victory, so it's time to take out the trash, only to discover that your garbage bin is actually a portal to another dimension, making everything surprisingly easy. Being able to zoom back and forth between worlds without limits is an absolute game changer. But Sun Ho is completely wiped out from the manual labor, proving that even with cheats, the apocalypse is still rough. As he sinks deep into exhaustion, A sudden thought strikes him that the scariest part of jumping between worlds wasn't the monsters or magic, but something completely different. With the path to the hideout finally mapped, he faces the portal with a garden hose in hand, wondering if his wild idea will actually work. And the answer is a resounding yes, because even when an object sits between Earth and another world, interaction remains possible, meaning my man has literally connected his bathroom to a fantasy dungeon. That's crazy. He's literally power washing a goblin lair like it's just another chore, turning that apocalyptic mess into a place with real value. Of course, the work never really ends. He'll just keep scrubbing away stubborn blood spots and pouring fresh concrete over the floor to get that cool, modern, post-apocalyptic look. He's already dreaming up the next moves like mortar and sandwich panels, proving this isn't just a hideout, but a full-blown construction project, until his eyes suddenly catch a glimmer hiding in the rock. It wasn't just a little sparkle. It was the legendary lumen and ignis stones, the perfect beginning for any brave soul, as rare as a secret treasure found right at the start of the adventure. Wow! These were once just survival tools for new players, but now he's not just hanging on, he's crushing it, turning what used to be a dark cave into a sparkling gold mine. A wide, greedy smile stretches across his face as he finishes building and gets ready to start mining, because the apocalypse is getting darker by the day, and as the countdown clock ticks down to D29, we find ourselves back on Earth outside a place called Tasty Sanho's Snack Bar, which I definitely don't think is a good idea. Back in his apartment, Sam-ho feels the soreness from his productive day, realizing that power washing a cave was a true full-body workout. He stared at his arm, shocked to see it covered in tiny cuts, so used to life-or-death wounds that he barely noticed the paper cuts from killing monsters. He isn't just wasting one of his precious solar apples, he's also got loot from the other side, which makes the gears in his head start turning again, so he decides to test out one of his new strange-looking gourd items and play Apocalypse Apothecary by crafting some healing ointment first. The recipe is so simple that you just mix guaca powder and vegetable oil in a 5-to-5 ratio. You keep mixing until the mixture sets, making it look like a chef surviving the end of the world on a cooking show. And now you're back in the kitchen for baking with Sango. And just like that, he's mixed up a pretty useful balm that helps heal wounds, proving that his kitchen skills are a piece of cake and his game knowledge is finally paying off. He smeared some ointment on his arm and felt the sting fade, proving that this man who fights, builds homes, and now mixes medicine is finding a way to solve his problems, even if it's not a forever fix. As he admires his handiwork, a sobering thought hits him. This ointment is great, but is this really the game, or does he have to get within stabbing range of every monster just to survive? He knows he must keep grinding day in and day out to raise his stats, but at this pace, he fears he'll die of exhaustion before the real catastrophe even starts. So he starts thinking about weapons that fight from a distance, maybe a sling that works anywhere, or just a gun to keep the enemy far away until he's ready. As he's thinking things over, a memory from the game suddenly pops into his veteran mind, and then he pauses. There is just one thing on my mind. A little side story about a place called Seola. It wasn't part of the main adventure, just a little background story. But if that history actually comes true, everything could change. Either way, the info isn't wasted, so he dives straight into his old files to dig up every scrap of data he can find on the topic. If the strange events from the game story actually happen in our world, it could change things for the better, so a brand new quest just written by him is definitely worth chasing. With a fresh goal in mind, he climbs to the rooftop to get ready for building, and the delivery guy truly lived up to the hype by hauling all those heavy bags of mortar up there before dawn. Last night he ordered extra bags, and thanks to his fast Portal Express delivery, getting them into the hideout went smoothly, proving once again that it's better to work smart than hard. Then it was time to gather the rest of his supplies, so he walked down to the first floor where a bunch of packages were waiting for him. Just as he's about to move the boxes, a familiar singing voice calls out his name. Mr. Samho. It's his friendly neighborhood barber, Mikyong, who pops out to say hello and ask if he's moved, since she's seen him so much lately, but he has no idea what she's talking about. She claims she spots him all the time now, leaving him confused since he's been eating tteokbokki daily without seeing her. So Mikyong feels flustered realizing her stalking has been caught. She apologizes for being busy with her shop's remodeling, but Soho just smiles, guessing she's either super observant or just a huge fan of spies. She notes that he used to visit for a haircut only once every 3 months, but now he shows up almost daily, and since he agrees she is right, she immediately suggests getting a cut right now, proving her sales style is straight to the point. You know what? He's got to get a haircut because of all the exploring he's been doing. He agrees it's practical, and maybe it will finally get that friendly neighborhood stalker off his back. So Seonho sits in the barber's chair looking like a disheveled rock star. And when Mikyong asks what he wants, he says, just shave it all off. She was taken aback by his sudden decision to shave his head as a fresh start, a move so typical of an anime hero that he's leaning right into it. Aha! She gets it and promises to make the noble cause look beautiful with her spray bottle. But while she works, She notices his shoulders look broader and asks if he's been exercising, to which he casually claims the secret Surad workout plan is paying off, only for her to drop a lore bomb about status windows and game survival, causing his cool act to shatter when she reveals that awakened people are just former players, proving he isn't a glitch but a feature after all. His mind races as everything changes, and he immediately grills Mikyong on her source. But before she can speak, the door chimes and in walks INH, a tow truck driver with terrible tattoos who turns out to be the one who knows everything. INH starts shouting about some jerk who's trying to steal all the knowledge by deleting videos and running away, while Sunho just sits there getting a haircut and realizes he's the target, only for INH to brag that his group is hunting down this guy's home, even though Mikyong warns him that's against the law and he just ignores her. He leans in close, puffing out his chest and acting tough while sneering, "Gez, Miss Mikyong, are we really picky?" But the answer is a firm yes, you absolutely are. He's convinced that tracking down this Kimba Plover guy, whose old streamer name was Soho, is the right move for everyone, while Seon-ho just stares at how bold he was to do it. Inhak suddenly turns his attention to pressuring Mikyong to join their team, even grabbing him and ranting about how fast things are moving while cutting his hair. But Sunho thinks it's disgusting because he knows Hak is only just getting started. INH whines that the situation would be fine if that jerk had just uploaded the info, while Songo sits there thinking she sounds like she owes him money and leans in to intimidate her, declaring he can't wait long, even as she worries that sharing the data might just feed the vultures circling him, until INH cuts himself off and a quiet, firm voice from the barber chair calls out, "Hey you, it's Somo," who stares blankly and flatly says, "I don't know what you're talking about, but can we talk later?" Because he's heard enough. Infurious, he whirls around and shouts, "What? Who do you think you are?" Right before Sunho's eyes flare with a menacing red glow as he warns, "Leave while I'm asking nicely, or you'll get flushed red like last time." Hak lets out a terrified gasp, remembering last time. So the bully turns into a coward, stammers that today isn't his lucky day, and bolts from the shop, leaving Mikyong staring in shock. Mikyong lets out a huge sigh of relief, and the tension vanishes instantly, revealing her hero as a guy with a buzz cut. Sunho, the smooth operator, turns to her, tells her that guy is trouble, and suggests they swap numbers just in case, all while RSP reaches an apocalypse level 100 intensity. After getting a fresh haircut, Sunho stops his construction work, turns on his computer, and checks what everyone online is saying about him. He frantically hunts for Kimba Plover and gasps in horror, realizing the live scoreboard has turned into a burning mess, so he erases every video and vows to murder the cowardly Kim Apple if he ever finds his address, while the internet waits undefeated. The town was covered in insults aimed at him, with every single post hunting for that one bastard. But then he spots something that makes his blood run cold, and he reads posts from the Inhax crew urging the leader to seduce the hair salon girl he mentioned earlier and bring her along. He slams the computer shut, unable to believe how rotten humanity has become, but as a veteran, his mind holds strong against the madness, and now he is simply done with their nonsense. Instead of getting angry, his mind clears instantly, the way ahead becomes obvious, and he opens a portal with a cold, determined heart. For the next 2 days, he dives headfirst into hard physical work, hammering away at lumen and ignis stone with his pickaxe to burn off his stress, proving that mining is a cheaper fix than therapy. He mixes mortar, pours in the rough concrete, and spreads it evenly across the cave floor, knowing that even this hard, exhausting work is real progress. With the foundation finally set, he steps outside to let it dry and takes a well-deserved break after 2 days of hard work. He gazes up at the lonely moon shining in the dark of this strange new world, and as he stands there, a thought takes root. He decides to fight injustice with his own kind of justice, tightening his fist as a new belief hardens in his heart, not because he feels like a hero, but simply because he is one person who cannot let this go. In the end, he's the only one left to keep breathing, and even though it's not a noble or right thing to do, that's just how life is. But right when he makes his dark decision to turn back inside, a sudden noise freezes him in his tracks. He whips his head around, his survival instinct screaming that he's not alone. A tiny, creepy bone monster pops up right at his front door, and that's a bad sign. As the monster's eyes start to glow with a charging attack, Songo's already terrible day just gets even worse. Suddenly, a bone-shattering boom echoed as the bone creeper, a monster's signature attack, slammed into him because he was too close, sealing his fate with just 27 days left before the world ends.